everyone, welcome to Pai's Kitchen. Today I am making a matcha caramel pudding, which is another recipe inspired by my recent trip to Japan. And if you recall, if you saw that video, I had this delightful creme caramel. And there was also a lot of matcha consumed during that trip, and so it occurred to me that, these two flavors would go really well together. But I also wanted to make a very simple recipe, so I am doing a no-bake version that is really as simple as it gets. So let's get started. So the first thing we're going to make is the caramel portion of this, which is very simple. I'm going to make a wet caramel, just plain old sugar. To make it wet, I'm gonna add some water. Just enough, there's no specific amount of water you need, just enough to wet it. So like a couple tablespoons is fine. Now I'm gonna just turn the stove on to about medium heat and just let that dissolve and slowly turn into a beautiful caramel color. So while that's heating up, let's look at my little containers. Now, depending on whether you wanna unmold it, you can choose your things accordingly. So this, I can't unmold anything out of it because the top is narrower. So this is like a eat in the jar kind of thing. But this will be perfect for unmolding because it will come out, the top is wider. I'm gonna put some hot water on the bottom. And I want to keep these hot so that when I pour the caramel doesn't harden so quickly. Okay. And rule of thumb for making caramels, you try not to stir it because stirring encourages crystallization. I personally have never had that problem, even when I do stir it, but it's always safe to take that precaution. So swirling is a gentler way. If you've got sugar stuck to the sides of the pot after you swirl, you just take a brush that's wet with water and just brush it down. And how dark you'd make this caramel is completely up to you. I like mine quite dark because I like that intense flavor. But right here, some of you may like it just like that. I like to push it darker. I like the way that looks. This is just dark enough for me. So now I'm going to quickly pour this into my containers. Careful, do not get your hands on this stuff. Like I'm telling you, this is going to be the worst kind of burn you experience. Touch more here. Touch more there. Yeah, that looks good. Since this is a no-bake pudding, what are we going to use to set it if not cooked eggs? That's right, gelatin. So I've got here some powdered gelatin, and I'm just going to sprinkle this first onto some water. And you always want to do this when working with gelatin because gelatin needs time to bloom, as they call it. Basically, that means it hydrates, absorbs a bunch of water, and you don't want to pile it all into one big pile because otherwise you get a pocket in the middle that doesn't have access to water. Now that's going to need maybe 10-15 minutes, so we'll let that go. So I've got some milk over here. I'm just using 2% because it's what I drink, it's what I have in the fridge. You can also do whole milk, but whatever you do, do not do skim milk, people. Now is not the time for low fat. Not just, woo! Now to enrich it a little bit, I'm going to add some whipping cream. And the ratio of whipping cream to regular milk is sort of up to you. You can make it richer and add more and make it lighter and add less. And then for sweetness, I'm gonna add condensed milk because we get sweetness and extra milky goodness. Why not, right? You could just do sugar, but hey, I'm Asian and us Asians love our condensed milk. A tiny little smidge of salt to balance out the sweetness. And because this is milk, you want to be stirring. Otherwise, sometimes you get that milk protein cooked and stuck to the bottom of the pot. If you keep stirring, you won't get that. All right, so it's steaming now. I'm just going to turn off the heat. Let me get my matcha in there. So matcha is basically green tea powder, okay? You can get it at lots of different stores, health food stores, Asian grocery stores. But the thing is, it's very clumpy, so you need to sift it into the milk to make it a little bit easier for you to get everything dissolved. If you're actually using granulated sugar, what you could do is mix the matcha with the sugar to break up all of the lumps. Stir that in. And spend a little bit of time whisking just to make sure all the lumps are dissolved. If you get tiny little lumps, that's fine. We're going to strain it one more time anyway. What I should have done was sift a little bit, whisk a little bit, and then sift a little more and whisk a little bit more. But, oh well. And now the gelatin, which has completely absorbed all the water, Just add all of that in. Bloop. And that's it. Now, if this is your first time making, I would taste for sweetness. I don't make this very sweet for myself because there's going to be caramel as well, but if you like it sweeter, you may want to add a little more sugar, a little more condensed milk. So now I'm going to transfer this into a pouring container because trust me, that's going to make it easier. And you definitely want to strain this to make sure there are no lumps of matcha left, okay? And one thing to note about matcha too, it doesn't actually dissolve because these are like powdered tea leaves, right? So the leaves themselves are not going to liquefy. So you'll always get little grains, and that is not a cause for concern. That is just the way it is. It's actually cool because it's going to create layers, because once the leaves settle to the bottom, it'll create layers, which makes it extra cool. And now we'll get that into our little cups. One thing you do want to do while you pour is stir it, because again, the matcha settles at the bottom. Do I have enough for one more? See, I don't even have enough for that one. This is the first time I've made this recipe with these particular combinations of molds, so I didn't really know exactly how much I would need. I have an idea. Aha! Oh, look how pretty. Now you want these to chill in the fridge, preferably overnight. They might set within a few hours, but what you want also is to give the caramel time to dissolve. If you get it out as soon as it's chilled, you'll find that only some of the caramel is dissolved and the bottom is still going to be really hard. If you do it tomorrow, then you'll get more liquid caramel that you can access. So here are my puddings. As you can see, I have some wrinkles on 4 of them, and this is actually the first time it's ever happened to me, and my theory is that it was quite hot when I poured it in the cup and I put it directly in the fridge. Didn't happen to this one, so that's why I'm thinking it's temperature, because by the time there was only this much left, it had cooled down a lot. But either case, doesn't matter because we're either going to unmold it or we're going to garnish it with stuff on top. Now, we are rushing it a little bit because I'm filming and I didn't make any in advance, so I don't know if this will be ready to unmold, but we're going to find out. Oh, but before that, check out this gradient. Because, as I said, green tea doesn't actually dissolve. When you put it in the fridge, it'll kind of slowly settle to the bottom, and as it sets, it kind of catches some journey. And every time I've made this, it's created a different pattern. So it's kind of cool to see, like, what's it gonna look like this time? Okay, so if you want to unmold it, what you want to do, dip this into the hot water, and then you feel it. Like, you just feel it. I twist it around and you'll see that it's loose now. It's not stuck to the glass anymore. See, if I was more organized, I'd have ones ready to go for you. And flip. Oh, it's still kind of holding. Oh, there you go. It's holding. Oh, and it jiggles. I just love doing this. It's just so fun. And as you can see though, because I rushed it, I still have a bit of caramel stuck to the bottom that hasn't had a chance to dissolve. If you give it enough time, all of that will be liquefied. But hey, that worked out pretty cool. Look how cute that is, right? If you don't want to unmold it, which is generally what I like to do just for the sake of simplicity, this is how I suggest you garnish it. So you take a tiny little bit of whipping cream in a tiny little pitcher, preferably. And then what this does is it sort of adds to that gradient. I also have some red bean paste. So this is sweetened red bean paste that you can just get already finished from like a Japanese grocery store. Yeah, red bean and green tea is just a flavor match made in heaven. Look at that. 4 really beautiful layers. And you want to make sure you dig all the way through to the bottom to release some of that caramel. Oh, yes. Oh, the perfect amount of creaminess melts immediately in your mouth. Oh, that caramel flavor. Nice and intense, and then you get the texture from the red bean. I'm telling you, if you are a fan of green tea, this is it. Cannot go wrong. Can you tell I'm hungry? So the recipe, as always, will be on paiskitchen.com. When you make it, send me a photo on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. I am also on Pinterest now for those of you who are pinners. And if you haven't subscribed to the show, make sure you do so you don't miss an awesome recipe like this. And click that little bell icon so you get a notification when I post a new video. If you love the show and you want to support us, check out our Patreon link in the description below. And I will see you next time for your next delicious adventure.